Hi, everybody. It's Mr. Wyatt again, and today we are going to talk about how to find the area of a circle. In the last lesson, we were talking about circumference, which is the distance around the circle. Area, instead of being the distance around or the perimeter of the circle, is now all the space inside of the circle. How much um, space is there inside of the circle? And we have a formula for that today. So anyway, today, what is our learning goal? Well, I can use a formula to calculate the area of a circle when I'm given the radius or when I'm given the diameter of the circle. And in our last lesson, we talked about what radius and diameter are. And so let's take a look here and see what we have. Area of a circle, again, is the total space inside of the circle. If you look at this circle here, it's all of this area shaded gray. And you can see the radius connects the center of the circle to the outside of the circle. That measurement is your radius. In fact, the radius is used to make a circle, as I mentioned in the last lesson, because all these points on this circle going around its perimeter are exactly the same distance away from that center point right there. Remember, pi equals 3.14, which is rounded to the nearest hundredth. It's really an irrational value, but we use 3.14 for pi. And your area formula is pi r squared, which means pi times the radius squared. Area is always square units. You should remember that from when we were finding area of other shapes as well. And so the formula has squared in it. Your radius squared times pi will give you this area here. All right, so let's find the area of a couple of circles here. I'm going to see if I can switch my color here to something a little bit. Maybe I'll go with red here today. We'll go with red. Find the area of each circle. If I want to find the area, I'm going to start by writing down my area formula. Area equals pi r squared. Pi times the radius squared. And we'll use 3.14 for pi. And we always use 3.1 for pi unless we're asked to use something else. So let's find the area. I'm going to just rewrite my formula, but now I'm going to substitute values in. In place of pi, I'll put 3.14 times the radius squared. What is the radius of this circle? Well, I have a 14-meter measurement here. Is this the radius? Well, this is showing a segment passing all the way through the circle. So this is not the radius. Remember, the radius would be the distance just from the center of the circle out to the outside of the circle. This measurement here is the diameter. So if I want to find the radius, I need to cut that in half. Remember, the radius, this measurement here, is always half of the diameter. Okay? So if my diameter is 14 meters, I have to divide that by 2 to get the radius. So my radius is 7 meters. So I have area equals pi, 3.14, times 7 squared. Now, remember now, we need to follow our order of operations, and we need to do our exponents before we do our multiplying. So we have to figure out what 7 squared is equal to. And that means 7 times 7, which is 49. Okay? The exponent is telling you how many times this base of 7 appears as a factor. And see, it's appearing twice as a factor here. We have 7 times 7. We're multiplying that number by itself. There are no 2's involved in this problem. The squared simply means 7 is being multiplied by itself. It's 7 times 7, or 49. So area equals 3.14 times 49. At this point, yeah, feel free to grab a calculator and you can multiply these together. So I grab my calculator. I'm using just a regular calculator. If you're using a scientific calculator, please, I know there's a button on there that has the pi symbol. Don't ever use that button. I want you to use 3.14 for pi. If you use the pi button, it's actually going to substitute in 3.141592654, depending how many digits your screen will display, which is going to give a much more precise result. But here I'm asking you to use 3.14 for pi. So if you use the pi button, you won't get exactly what I'm looking for. Let's enter 3.14 times 49 equals, and it says 153.86. So I'm going to write that down, 153.86. And then for my label, I'm working with meters here, but since it's area, it's got to be square units. So my area is 153.86 square meters. So just remember, area is always square units. Let's try another one. Find the area of this circle here. My first step is to write down the formula. Area equals pi times the radius squared. So then I just start filling in some numbers. Area equals pi, 3.14, times the radius, which is 8 squared. This time the measurement I'm given is the radius, because notice it's just going from the center of the circle to the outside of the circle. So that is the radius. That's the number I want to use. So the last example, we had to divide 14 by 2 to get the radius of 7. Don't divide this one by 2 because this already is the radius. Okay, so you just have to pay attention. You need the radius. If you're given the radius, use it. If you're not given the radius, if you're given the diameter, then cut it in half to get the radius. Okay, so area equals 3.14 times, and now what is 8 squared? Well, it's 64. Remember, 8 squared really means 8 times 8. We're not working with the number 2, we're working with the number 8. This exponent tells us that we have 2 of those 8s. It's appearing twice as a factor, once, twice. And 8 times 8 is 64. Okay, so we have the area is 3.14 times 64. And now, grab your calculator. 3.14, I'm just entering it in my calculator, times 64 equals, and it says 200.96. So my label here, I'm working with feet. Area will be square feet then. Area is always square units. So I'm going to put square feet here for my label. Maybe I'll rewrite this whole thing because it's a little bit messy. 200.96 square feet. It's really, really close to 201, isn't it? In fact, if you weren't rounding 3.14 to 3.14, if you used 3.1415926, it's going to actually creep up closer to that 201 square feet, isn't it? But since we're using 3.14 for pi, we will write 200.96 square feet for our answer. Let's try another one. Find the area of this circle, but this time the directions say round to the nearest 10th. I'll pull my picture down a little bit so you can see that. Round to the nearest 10th. So we're adding just one more little step here to round at the end. Okay, so I'll start by, since I'm looking for the area, I'll start by writing down the area formula. A equals pi r squared. Yesterday we had the circumference formula, C equals pi times d, the diameter. That was a pretty easy formula too. But here, this one's also easy. Area is pi times the radius squared. So now I'll just substitute in some numbers. Area equals, it says to use 3.14 for pi. 3.14 Maybe instead of using parentheses to show times, maybe I'll just actually use a time sign this time. Times the radius squared. Uh-oh. What's the radius of this circle? Is 48 meters your radius? Hopefully you can see that's actually your diameter. This is your diameter right here because it's going all the way across the circle, passing through the center of the circle. It's the longest chord. Remember that term chord from the last lesson? So if the diameter is 48 meters, to find the radius, I need to divide this by 2. So the radius will equal 48 divided by 2. Hopefully you can do that mentally, especially since both of these digits are even numbers. Cut them both in half, you'd have 24, wouldn't you? So your radius, this measurement right here, is 24 meters. So it's pi 3.14 times the radius 24 squared. And now I can go ahead and solve this. Area equals, let's figure out what 24 squared is. 24 times 24 equals 576. So it's 3.14 times 576. So 576 times 3.14 equals 1,808.64 square meters. Do you like the answer? Does it look good to you? It looks good to me, except look at the directions. The directions said to round to the nearest 10th. So let's go ahead and round this to the nearest 10th. I have a 6 here in the 10ths place. Look to the 100ths place then to decide if you will round that up or if it will stay a 6. And 4, if it were 5 or more, you'd let this 6 soar up to a 7. But 4 or less, give it a rest. I don't know what the little rhyme there is. 4 or, I don't know. But to the nearest 10th, this will be 1,808.6 square meters. Okay? So if you were working on the assignment and you thought you were looking for 1808.64 and you didn't see it, well, check your directions. Did it say it around to the nearest 10th? That's the one you want then, 1,808.6 square meters. It's weird having square units when you're looking at circles, isn't it? Why aren't they circle units? Well, area is square units. Literally how many squares, how many square 1 by 1 meter squares could fit in this circle. That's how many. All right, and one more example here. Find the area of this circle here. And this one we have 31.5 feet here. And this actually is our radius, isn't it? It's the measurement from the center to the outside of the circle. So to find the area, write your formula down. That should always be your first step. Area equals pi times the radius squared. So area equals, use 3.14 for pi, times the radius, which is given 31.5 squared. If you have a scientific calculator, you can enter this exactly as it shows. Just enter 3.14, hit the times button, then enter 31.5, and then hit the x squared button, and then hit enter. It'll give you your answer. On my calculator, since it's just a plain one, I'll take 31.5 times 31.5 times 3.14. And I get 3,115.665. Rounding to the nearest 10th, this 6 will round up to a 7 because this is 5 or more here in the hundredths place, isn't it? So 3,115.7 square feet. We're working with feet here. Area is always square units. Okay, so that's it for your area lesson today. Always write this formula down as your first step, and then you can use a calculator from